Thank you very much. There's something special, about speaking at a place close to home. So I grew up around here in Stenberg and in Retreat. And at least one Jansen went to school here, I think. So it is good to be here. It's good to be home. You sort of have memories when you sort of come from where I live now in Stellenbosch, and you come here and you sort of say, there was like a pig here somewhere, on the roads, everybody, and there was sort of, is that pig still here? Spotty?
It's a dog.
Okay, it's a dog. Okay, it's a dog, This is from a zoology 3 student. There was a dog, Spotty, I think, or something they called him. And there was also a little place you could drive in and order food. And if you were white, you could get it served in your car. If you were not white, you had to get out and order. You remember that? No, you won't, of course, et cetera, et cetera. So I have very pleasant memories of the place. And it was it's a tough upbringing if you grew up in Stenberg, in Botner Street, Craddock Road, and Retreat in 10th Avenue. And it was particularly bad when my parents became born-again Christians, because my mother is from Montague, and her name is Sarah, I lie you not, and she was Dutch Reformed. Now, the Dutch Reformed people were quite screwed, so they had no, I'm not making this up, they had a church for white people, they had a church for colored people, they had a church for Africans, the Dutch Reformed Church in Africa, that's actually what it's called, which means the rest of you are somewhere else, and they also had one for Indians. It was fascinating, the Dutch Reformed Church. So there was that, and so she decided one day, when she got in touch with the gospel people, the people in this Brethren church. They were sisters, but they called themselves the Brethren, and so she became seriously born again. This is Sarah, but she's in Montague, and she works at Brooklyn Chest, and later on at a hospital, I don't know if it still exists, called Princess Alice Orthopedic, and so that's my mom. How she meets Abraham, this is his name, Abraham, okay? My father, who was born in Lansdowne, in Denver Road, Lansdowne, until, and so he's English speaking, she's Afrikaans speaking. He's Anglican, she's Dutch Reformed Mission Church. He's shy, she's bold, he's tall, she's, and how did God bring together Abraham and Sarah? And so I am not making this up, some of you know them. Abraham worked for Nanusi Dry Cleaners as a driver. Sarah, as I said, was a nurse. So she gets born again, and he decides, like she, that the Anglicans are on the way to hell, so he becomes born again. I'm not making this up. That's how I was reared, okay? And so Abraham and Sarah get together in the Athlone Brethren Church, and they get married by a chap called Moore, and they become so fervent in their Christian faith that they name all of their children after biblical characters. I am the eldest. My names are Jonathan, David. Remember them in the Bible? The first gay couple. I lie you not. You didn't know that? I'm so sorry. 1 Samuel chapter 13 and verse 9, the love of Jonathan for David was greater than the love of a man for a woman. Hello? And so I'm Jonathan David, and I'm supposed to be the responsible one. Didn't you hate it? Those of you who are first, you're the responsible one. My brother Peter is the rock upon which Christ built the church, if you believe that. So there's Peter. And my sister is Naomi, Naomi and Ruth, Old Testament. And of course, being Abraham and Sarah, they had to have a kid called Isaac. He's the naughty one, and we would beseech our parents to offer him up as a burnt sacrifice, to the Lord. They never quite got that far. And so I grew up here, and around me I saw gangsters, I saw alcoholism, I saw, long before there was stick, there was other stuff, and I saw kids and parents circulating between Paulsmoor Prison and where we lived. But somehow we grew up in this bubble And it was a horrible bubble. Because my parents believed things that you don't, like that sex is for marriage. I was expecting an amen at this point, you know. No amen, sorry, Stuart. They believed stuff. I mean, I tell you, and so you grew up in this really, really conservative environment. I mean, I to this day, I don't smoke. I don't drink, and my kids are adopted. Okay, 2 of those things are true. And that really protected us, because in that bubble of faith and of commitment and of fervor and of, you couldn't go wrong. And of course, loving parents. I remember the first time I saw 2 bergies. You know, it's a bergie, if you grew up in the Cape. In the Cape, it's called a bergie. In Johannesburg, it's called a tsotsi. In the Free State where I lived, it's called the Youth League. But anyway, they... Don't make that joke with ANC, you people. And so this sort of protected us from a lot of bad stuff, you know, that was going on. But it gave me a value system in which certain things were right and other things were wrong. You didn't steal other people's money. You know, you didn't do stuff that were weird. And so I'm very grateful for Abraham and Sarah, despite the fact that I think it was very conservative, very tight. They believed weird things like every Catholic, Anglican, you know, anybody outside of the household of faith was going to hell. The Muslims were already there, you know. I mean, weird. And of course, I had to, on the one hand, believe this stuff. On the other hand, I had to break away from it. The one thing that I didn't understand, which is why they eventually threw me out of the church, I couldn't understand. You see, because I'm a simple Christian, not a good one, but I'm a simple Christian. So the cross of Christ to me means that we won. There's no way you're going to explain those 2 bulker to me outside of the cross. So why the hell do you have white churches in Pinelands and in Claremont, and in Stellenberg Chapel, and black churches down here? I didn't get it, so I asked that question once. And I thought it was the rapture. I thought I was going up. Meanwhile, it was 2 elders picking me up, and they sort of threw me out of the church. And so here we are today, and I was very lucky to have a lot of support, a lot of love from a whole lot of people who didn't have a lot of money. But they were very, very... Yesterday, I went to see Auntie Barbara in Grassy Park. She's 94 years old, and I went on my knees, and I said to her, I just want to thank you for that 20 rand that enabled me to register for my first year, when my parents couldn't afford. You know, I was right here. UCT decided to give me an honorary doctorate. I was going to tell them keep it, you know, because I thought to myself, I applied there. I had the first kid from Stenberg those days with a first-class pass. I thought I can just get in here and not have to travel all the way to Belleville, where I didn't even understand formal Afrikaans. But such was the racism of apartheid. You know, you had to go there, and so on and so forth. And so, despite all of that stuff, I was really lucky to have good parents, and I was really lucky to be taught well. And then a lot of support from people like Bishop Tutu, who allowed me to study overseas, and that kind of thing. So I often study people who were not supposed to succeed and sort of say, how does this happen? I still don't know, but there's a lot of luck. And my mother would have said, a lot of blessing, you know, etc. And then I decided, since I was a kid, to always do the opposite of what everybody else was doing, partly because it was more fun. So all my friends at Sullivan Primary School supported Cape Town City. Just for the heck of it, I supported Hellenic, the Greek team, okay? And because I find it interesting. Everybody, black person like me, used to work in black universities. I said, I wonder what it's like to go and work in white universities. Just scare the hell out of them, you know, and just sort of be in that space, you know? And that is my life. I like to sort of think a little differently from other people. I don't do well with mass meetings. I don't go to any mass meeting. I don't believe in following the crowd. And those of you who are young researchers, let me just tell you, the best thing to do is to think for yourself. You'll come up with amazing stuff that nobody else. Like, how is it possible that from Jan van Riebeeck in the City Bowl all the way to Paul Greyling in Fischhoek, and right down the main road, we have Grove, Herschel, and I've been to all these schools, 30 of them, all the primary schools. Springfield. Did you know something about Springfield? Did you know it's the only school in the world where when you die as a teacher, they bury you right there on the property? Any Springfield girls here? Springfield girls. You know that? So, wait. Just let me complete my story. Don't spoil it. So the Dominican nuns, when they die, there's a service in the chapel, and the kids stand around, which must be very traumatizing if you're in grade 1. And then they carry you down. And rumor has it the grade 1 kid said, oh no, there goes period 5. Anyway, and the nuns are now lying, according to Judith February, 3 deep in the middle of the school. Springfield. I love it. You know, isn't that the way to go? I mean, if you're a Catholic, that's the way to go. You know, you died with your boots on, you know, or whatever Catholics wear. Anyway, so the schools are weird. There's a school I'll talk about later called Red School. It's the most transformed school in South Africa. You're looking for a former white school that is a model school. Go to Pinelands North Primary, led by an amazing principal called Ann Morton. And I spent a whole day there the other day from 7 in the morning till 7 at night, and I looked at the school. I said, you know what? This is the kind of school that will make our country great. And it's the only school, by the way, that I know of, that when the black kids went over 50%, there's only 2 countries that struggle with this, the United States and South Africa. When the black kids went over 50%, the white parents flee. And you say, not us, we like really upright Christians. Fuck you all. Let me tell you something. Let me tell you something about you. Let me tell you something about you. And I love you. I really do. If you don't have enough money and you're a white South African and you're living in these parts, you go to Bergfleet Primary and you just suck it up because there's a whole lot of black kids there over 50%. If you've got a little bit more money, you come into Kirstenhof, where you can still be white. But if you really want to be white and you've got the money, you go to Sweet Valley. Don't tell me, thank you. No. I have figured you guys out. I have figured you out. This is hierarchy. If you don't have money as a white person and you're poor white, you go to Blue School, Pinelands Primary. You got a little bit more money, you go to the inclusive school, Red. But if you want to be white, you go to Green School. Every part, you don't go to Musenberg Junior, God help you. You know what I'm talking about. And if you look at the data that will come out in our book towards the end of this year, you will see that there is a direct correlation between the school fees and the whiteness of the school. Direct. You want to be really, really white, you go to Redham. But you must be prepared to pay 120,000 rand just to get in. That's you, my brothers and sisters. I teach your children. I love them. And one of the reasons that I admired Stuart for inviting me here is because I thought to myself, this guy is courageous. Because he knows surely what I'm going to tell you. Now, let's be honest. I'm going to be honest with you, and I'm also going to be honest with myself. I didn't drive here along this horrible road through the stench of raw sewage on the R300 and whatever it's called, to get here late at night in 25 minutes from Stellenbosch in heavy traffic because I have time to waste. This is my 6th talk for the day, so I didn't come here after a quick shower at home because I want to waste your time. I come here because I believe that the reason you even showed up is that as a South African, or wherever you're from, by the way, you really want to make this country better. Like many of you, I work 18 hours a day, not because I've got ADHD, which I probably have, but because I want to make our country a really great country for all of us. So I want to be honest with you. Now, for a long time in my life, I didn't like people who looked like most of you here tonight. I'm just being honest with you. I used to hate white people. Why? Because on both sides of the family, especially on my mother's side, we were comfortably middle class in Montague until they took the property of my grandfather. Opposite the Avalon Hotel, if you know Montague, it's a huge stretch of land that belonged to us, a huge house. And they put him in the Lokasi. And Jonathan Jansen went blind for the rest of his life. I think it was glaucoma. His daughters believe that he refused to see. So that hurt me for a long time. And if you knew the dignity of that family, you must understand what it meant to suddenly be in a shack. My father's house in Denver Road, Lansdowne, also taken and given to whites. And so I really hated white people for a long time, until I went to serve as a dean of education at the University of Pretoria. And I've written this up in my book, Knowledge in the Blood. And I started to work with these young white Afrikaans-speaking kids, and through an amazing set of transformations, came to understand them not as somebody else's children, but as my children. And I would walk through a wall for any kid. I don't care where they're from. I don't care how they pray. I don't care how they make love when they're married. And I don't care what language they speak or the accident of the epidermis. I really couldn't care. What I cared about is that these are our children, and I've got to work to make all of them successful. But I'm being honest to you. So you can imagine when my son came home with a white girl, I was upset. I said, Mikhail, of all the beautiful black women in this country, you come home with a white kid. We were living in Bloemfontein. He said, Dad, you can't meet Catherine's parents at the wedding. So my wife and I reluctantly jumped in the car in Bloemfontein, drove to Lynnwood, Pretoria, to meet the enemy. And when we got there, I'm just opening my heart to you guys. Don't judge me. So when we got there, things were tense, and my son tiptoed over to me and said, Dad, whatever you do, don't embarrass us. I said, son, have I ever embarrassed you? He just rolled his eyes, as like kids do when you talk nonsense. And things were tense. And I thought, okay, I'm going to let the green stuff come by first before I talk. So the salads came. And when the red meat came, I decided to speak to these white people as if they were deaf. So I said, Sir! What first crossed your minds? See, I'm a wordsmith. Every word is chosen in advance. Sir, what first crossed your minds when my son decided to darken your doorstep? You've got to like that one. Right? You've got to like that one. Oh, my poor boy went sliding under the table. And then Catherine's mother spoke, Brenda, and you know what endeared me? I'm opening my heart to you guys, okay? I'm being honest with you. Unlike you, I'm being honest with you. And one of the things I struggle with as a black South African is when white people speak English as if they're still in Nottingham. Oh, it drives me nuts like it's UCT people. But she spoke to me in working class English. And she looked at me when I asked the question and she said, well? She said, well, I said to myself, Brenda, I said. You catch the nuances. Are you truly a non-racist? I couldn't believe it. When she saw my black boy, she didn't judge him. She questioned herself. I was so happy. I ran towards her, gave her a huge hug. And I said, welcome to our family, and we're the best. And so now we have this beautiful grandchild, Zara. I wish I've got a picture here on my phone. She's amazing. And so my wife and I jumped in the plane and went when the baby was born to Pretoria Academic Hospital, and we rushed into the ward. And just as we get in, my wife's racist family calls from here. Now, they know they mustn't talk this racism with me. They know, because I've spoiled so many family braais. No, they're really racist, eh? And they don't hide it. So I remember when we got back from the US, they say, oh, Jonathan, you mustn't go to Rondebosch East, eh? I said, don't get a house there. I said, why not? No, it's no longer Rondebosch East. They call it the Middle East. I said, listen here. Muslim South Africans are as South African as any of us. What the hell is wrong with you people? How dare you go and break bread in church and talk this crap with me? Half of you have Muslim forebears. Ooh, so they know when we get together, my wife's on a CNVs, and nobody talks race because Jonathan is going to explode. Oh, Jonathan, all the people coming here from the Eastern Cape to vote, I said, fuck you. Let me tell you something. Let me tell you something. Do you know the history of District 6? Colored and African people lived there for centuries. And they made this a colored labor preference area and pushed out Africans as if they come from somewhere else. What did Alan call them? Refugees. Alan is a refugee as far as I'm concerned. You don't talk like that about other people. So I'm with my baby. It's a divine moment. And I'm holding Zara. And the last thing on my mind is the South African rubbish. I'm just holding my first grandchild. And my phone rings. And I said, Here, help me. But now they're emotional, so things come out that wouldn't normally come out. So I take out my phone. What is the kind of questions, ma'am? You look like a well-educated Free State girl. What are the types of questions normal people ask if you're not at the scene? Like, what would you ask Meghan, what's her name, Markle?
What's the baby's name?
A normal person would ask, what is the baby's name? Sir, what would a normal person ask?
Is the baby healthy?
Is the baby healthy?
How much did the baby
How much did the baby weigh?
Is the mum healthy? Yes.
Is the mum healthy? And in today's sort of modern society, what do they also ask? Is the dad healthy? Well, to hell with him. He had nothing to do with this thing. I don't care how healthy he is. He had nothing to do with it. You know, I hate these modern kids, when they come home and say, we are pregnant. I'm sorry. We are not pregnant. One of you is pregnant. One of you is going to have unbelievable pain. Don't come here with this crap that we are pregnant. What do these people ask? You know where they're from? Parkwood Estate North. I can see you don't get it. Thank you. They're actually from Fairways, but it's actually Parkwood Estate North. No. They said, well, sort of that too. Yeah. They said, Jonathan, because they're emotional, you see, what is she? What is she? Toe dink ek, ay, Vader, hier gaan ons alweer. What is she? So, of course, I'm going to play around. So I said, man, I'm not sure, but she looks gay. No, man, what? Don't be political. I'm being political. Don't be political. What is she? I said, I don't know. She might be Catholic. I see her. And of course, they believe, just like many of you, that there are 4 races. You are so screwed. You South Africans believe there are 4, even though we're the only country in the world that made legal categories out of 4 groups. I'm so sorry to my white brothers and sisters here. This is going to come as a shock, but you're probably not white. I mean, how do you live together for 350 years and not screw each other? Come on. Do you think the farmer only went to farm? Do you think land grabbing was the only grabbing going on? Come on, let's be real. So colored people, they never ever talk about the Khoi ancestry. It's almost the German grandfather. You know what I'm talking about. You want people. There is no, ask any modern geneticist, the genetic variation across all these different humans, it's negligible. So you can imagine at my own university how all hell broke loose 2 weeks ago when this bunch of idiots in the sports science department drew a relationship between colored women and their cognitive abilities. I said, Vaderland. But if you think, they're the only ones thinking that way. All of you do. You take a journal like Lancet, which is supposed to be a sophisticated medical science journal. They talk about the stomach ulcers in Indians. It's got nothing to do with being Indian. It's got everything to do with your diet. Then they talk about the cholesterol levels in Afrikaner men. It's got nothing to do, it's with what you eat. Then they talk about, for years, Lancet, the New England Journal of Medicine, and our local journal, South Africa, used to talk about tuberculosis as a colored. It's not a colored problem. It depends on where you live. It depends on ventilation. It depends on the dampness of the walls. Got nothing to do with this fictitious identity called colored or Indian or whatever. But you've all bought into this rubbish because you grew up here. And that is why 87% of you, I checked this now while I was standing here, you're sitting next to somebody who looks like you. I always used to laugh wherever I taught, in any university in South Africa, where I come into the class and I say to the students, say, no, professor, we're not racist. I said, well, look at your seating patterns. If you were blackboards and whiteboards, and I dropped you from the roof randomly, the chances statistically that your seating patterns would look like this is virtually zero. And that is why your children suckle. Because you suckle. And the reason my children don't struggle with this stuff is when they open their eyes. They saw in our home black people and white people. They saw Muslims and they saw Jews. They saw Christians. They saw gay people and they saw straight. Their house was totally normal. Our hearts were so big, we even had bloody stormers in that house. And I'm a blue bull. But you go to the braai at your home on a Saturday night, everybody's Presbyterian, everybody's white, everybody's colored. No wonder your kids are screwed. Now, I've taught high school in South Africa, and I've taught universities most of my life. Let me tell you something. I can tell you for a fact that your child will struggle with race relations to the extent that your home is normal, is open. Now, when I do workshops with white parents, it's always interesting, this question comes up. But professor, my children, you must see them in school. They play with the black kids. They don't have race. I said, that's actually true. Until they hit puberty, and then you go out of your fucking mind. This is how it works. You now, when they hit puberty, you as a white parent becomes, oh my God, what if this kid comes up with a bisexual black woman who supports Liverpool? You know, you... That's you. And I love you to death. But you're racist. All of you. And that is why you see kids will be doing well together, black and white at Bishops. They'll be doing well at Randbush Boys. At the moment they eat UCT, the anger comes out from the black kids. That's what happened 2 years ago, 3 years ago. Because they can't figure it out. Because when it comes to dating, you suddenly worry. Colored people, same thing. Do you know who gets kept out of these schools? The 30 schools that we talked about. Black Africans. And poor coloreds. You're quite happy as middle class colored people and middle class and elite white people to keep the school the way it is. That's the summary of our research. Every one of these 30 schools. Except the schools that turned black because the white parents fled, like Grooteskier Primary, like Muizenberg Junior, like Windsor Preparatory in Lansdowne. Now, I want to tell you something. I've never fought for black people, I've never fought for white people, I've fought for my country. If you're going to change this amazing school, and Kirstenhof has a wonderful academic reputation, you're going to have to shift your mind in how you think about yourself and others. It was painful for me to go through my own struggle with transformation. And I'm not saying I'm there yet, but I tried to raise my kids in such a way that the choices they made was based on the character of the person, not on the color of the person. This is tough for South Africans, all of us. I went to a wedding the other day. It was the most beautiful wedding I've ever been to. And Ibrahim Rasool's daughter, Tahrir, they're Muslim, marries a Hindu guy here at Kelvin Grove. Arabs sitting there, Arabs say, this is what I love about my country. and Ibrahim had to bring over his Muslim brothers and sisters. He didn't win with all of them, as you probably saw in the media. But he had to bring them over to saying the thing that they have in common is greater than the things that separate them. He says, I would have loved if he was a Muhammad, but he's not. He's Shande, or whatever his name was. And I saw this beautiful union. I see that every day in our country. A bunch of Muslim men came to see me the other day, last year, during Ramadan. And they said to me, Professor, would you please come and break fast? This is the son of Abraham and Sarah. Would you please come and break fast with us on Friday night? And I felt so honored. I really felt honored. My grandmother from Montague was Kulsum. She was a Malay slave, ancestry Malay slave. So I knew something about the importance of Muslim faith. So I felt honored. But then they walked away, and I ran after them there at Stellenbosch University, and I said, brothers, excuse me, where is the event? What they said next blew me away. They said it's at the Wynberg Shul. I said, you're out of your bloody minds. Where? They said, no, the Jewish community had invited us to the Wynberg Shul to break our fast. In what country in the world, ladies and gentlemen, does that happen? It doesn't happen in Texas. It doesn't happen in Kanu, Nigeria. It happens here because we are bigger than our past. And the school can do the same. But don't pretend you're normal. This is abnormal. You can't have 87% black people and you look like this. It's not sustainable. And you're either going to change because of a crisis. And when you change in a crisis, trust me about this, you lose control. Ask Sansusi. Ask Rustenburg girls. Ask my daughter went to Pretoria Girls. My kids only go to public schools. This is years ago. And I went into, my kids banned me from going to their school function. Like a night like this, I was not allowed to go. So I asked the principal all the awkward questions. Like when my son went to Westville Junior Primary, I put up my hand and I said to the principal after she introduced the teachers, I said, I really like this school. You know, with white people, you've got to first say nice things. I really like this school. But I would also like my kid to be taught by black teachers, so that his role models are both black teachers and white teachers. You know what happened next? Do you know who jumped down my throat? The Indian and the colored parents. No. We brought our kids here to be taught by these white people. You can go if you want to. Do you know how that hurts? Because I didn't know what to say. I could answer a white person. I couldn't answer these people that grew up. They know what struggling is. So I go to my daughter's school at Pretoria Girls. She said, Dad, grade 8, you don't say a word. It's welcoming grade 8 parents, the kids. And after I listened to the principal's speech, I said to her, could I just ask a question on my poor girl? Why must my daughter do nothing? The fact that Mrs. Mullins before the war had the kids do nothing doesn't mean that they must do nothing in the 90s. Anybody here went to Pretoria Girls? You know the knitting story. You know, there was this silence. It was as if I had asked Osama bin Laden to address the American Baptist Convention. I mean, it just went like quiet. I said I brought my daughter here so that she could fly a Boeing across the Atlantic, not to bloody knit. And I said our older brother is at Pretoria Boys next door. He's not knitting. They didn't get that one. just making a point about gender. And then I wanted to talk about the hair, by which time the parents booed me, so I sat down. 2 decades later, what breaks out there? A bloody stupid thing like hair. Do you really think the educability of a kid depends on how they tie their hair, for heaven's sake? It's stupid. A school with hair rules has lost its imagination. And you guys are to blame. I said the other day at a school called, I can't believe the school's name. Have you heard of a school called Wet Pups?
Yes.
I mean, who the hell comes up with a name like Wet Pups? It's meaningless. Like dry kittens. I mean, Wet Pups. Did you know there's a school in this province called Settlers? Now, after they pulled down the roads, I tell you, I will change that name like overnight. Settlers. So I told the principal, why did you change his bloody name? And, you obviously, like most South Africans, you won't change until the crisis comes. And I said at Wet Pups because I figured out the principal and I figured out the man in charge of transformation. And this is what I figured out. They really wanted to change that school, I believe that. But they can only do it to the extent that the parents support them. And I want to tell you, I don't know Stuart well enough yet. We have a mutual friend, Alan Anke, who speaks very well of him. But I'm going to give him the benefit of the doubt that he really does want to deeply transform the school. He can only do it to the extent that fee-paying parents allow him to. So give him your support. But if you don't have black African teachers, and don't give me this shit that you can't find them, okay? You can. The problem is what you believe about black African teachers. I can give you now, through the Jack Carroll Foundation, 20 of the best black teachers you will find anywhere in the world. And I have trained teachers across continents. And I've never seen such amazing young people. Get them! But don't start with the notion that excellence is invested in a white skin. I mean, are you that dumb? It isn't. And I beg you, even if you have weird private ideas about other people, think of your children. And it's tough for me as a parent as well. My daughter came home after my son got married, and she said, Dad, I'm in love. I said, Sarah, not again. We named her after her grandmother. Not again. And she says he's coming in from Durban on the bus to Bloemfontein at 3 a.m. in the morning. Now, I don't know about your culture, but in my culture, if a guy comes to date your daughter at 3 a.m., I'm wide awake. So at 3 a.m., I'm pacing up and down the kitchen. She goes to fetch the young man, and there he comes into my kitchen, 3 a.m., and he puts out his hand to greet me. Did I ask for his hand, ma'am? No, so I left him hanging. I said, son, what is your name? He said, Mpo. I said, listen, all my friends called Mpo are women. What have you not told my daughter? And, this is a fun. I said, where are you from? He said, can't we remember the place, north of Durban, a beach place, with a B. Belito. I said, listen here, because at that point I said, listen here, I've lived in South Africa all my life. There is no place called Belito. It's not even a Zulu name. My daughter rolled her eyes and says, Dad, Google it. So at 3 a.m., I opened my computer. And for the first time in my life, I discovered there is a place called Belito. How must I know? So I realized I'm getting nowhere with the skeptical. So I realized now I move on to the serious phase of this 3 a.m. discussion. Now, my daughter was born in a place called Redwood City, California, where I was studying at the time. And she was born by cesarean section. And I was there in the surgery. The doctors saw blood and guts. I saw the most beautiful girl. in the whole wide world. And I was so overcome with emotion, I took out my yellow pad, student pad, and I wrote down 10 questions that any man who would one day date my daughter would have to successfully answer. Any dads here with teenage daughters? I'm very happy to share the questions. So I went upstairs, opened the safe, took out the yellow pad, and brought it down. Sarah must have briefed him at this point, because there he sat next to my beautiful daughter. So I said, question number 1, criminal record? He said, none. I said, bank account? He said, none. I said, previous girlfriends? He said, none. Then I realized this kid is pulling my chain. So I went straight to question number 7, because no man that has come to date my daughter has gone past question number 7. It's a serious question, because as a Christian, I believe the prophet Ezekiel when he says in chapter 9 and verse 2 that your daughter must not marry an uncircumcised Philistine. So I went straight to question 7. Looked him in the eye, and I said, are you circumcised? And my daughter said yes. So if you are going to become a really good public school, and this school, I have what the anthropologists call a bit of an ethnographic technique. So I come into a school and most of the principal says I don't listen to. What I pick up is all the sights and sounds of the school. I have a look at the school. Like when I came in here, the 5 minutes was very helpful because I can just figure out who you are. You have a good school. And you must keep it a really good school. But you have to change your learner enrollments. You have to change who the teachers are so that they are more diverse. You have to change the culture and the coding that makes the school so tied to its history. You've got to change the symbolism. You've got to make the school a truly South African school. And when you do, you will find resistance. That's just in the nature of change. I didn't go to the University of the Free State for a free ride. I knew in a very conservative part of South Africa, it's going to be tough. But if you don't want to do this for the school, do it for your children, so that they can grow up being normal South Africans whose choices are not governed by where they come from, but by whom they can be. That's how I raised my 2 children. That's how I led 37,000 students. That's what I do. And I spend as much time at the schools with resources as tomorrow when I'll spend time at a school called Belveni Primary. It's in Elsies River. It's in a part of Elsies River where you go when you're feeling suicidal. You go in one side, there's no guarantee you're going to come out the other side. And I'm helping the school raise the several million rands to build their first school hall in a very dangerous part of Elsies. That's what I do. I give away half of my salary every month. I've done it for years now for children to be able to study at university. When UCT would not take this white girl from, was it Bergfleet, one of the high schools, we took her into our medical school at the University of the Free State. The day she graduated, I'd never seen a kid cry like that. She was so overwhelmed There's a place in our society for all of us. And that does mean giving of yourself. Giving of your resources is easy. Giving of yourself is everything. And I can give you hundreds of examples of people I work with. This family here in Meadow Reef opened their garage to give kids who would never get into a good school a chance to get a good preschool education, and then they contract with Weinberg and other schools so that these children can go through to university. Like Math Moms in Elsie's River, where a group of white women teach unemployed mothers from the township mathematics so that they can help their kids with math. Do you know the story? It was on television this morning on SABC3. Do you know what's happened? Some of those unemployed mothers are now mathematics teachers in our schools. They give not of their resources, they give of themselves. And the person who made this famous, the song, which I love so much, if I can just help somebody as I walk along, then my living shall not be in vain.